Hey everybody, I just want to make a quick video real quick, kind of give everybody, just for those of you who are not familiar with me and maybe have just subscribed to my channel, just kind of give you a little overview of what I do. And then I also want to offer a challenge to people out there as well. The things that I've discovered regarding our reality, I've taken a very analyst approach in order to do all this stuff. It started with things that I found in the cathedrals where they were showing the Orion Nebula in these cathedrals. Started with Karlskirch, which is an altar that was built in Vienna, Austria in 1737, and noticed that they were depicting the Orion Nebula in infrared on that altar. This type of thing was very interesting, and then I found repeated instances of it. I found a repeated instance of it in the Mother Jesuit Church from the art piece called Triumph of the Name of Jesus. I also found other instances of it, St. Mary's Cathedral, also the Chair of St. Peter, which Bernini did, which he also helped do the one inside the Mother Jesuit Church. Well, these repeated instances of the Orion Nebula coming up at these cathedrals obviously showed me that there was something important about the Orion Nebula, and I decided that I needed to go take a look at it. At the same time, I noticed that there were these depictions of it showing the Orion Nebula as this type of a vortex and so forth. Now, the interesting thing about these paintings and the mystical thing about them all is that they were showing these things sometimes 100 years before the first telescope was even invented. If we look up into the sky and we take a look at the Orion Nebula looks like a fuzzy star, so it's not something we could actually see any detail in. But yet people like Michelangelo were painting it 100 years before the first telescope. In their picture called The Creation of Adam. What I discovered was that these interesting depictions of the Orion Nebula, as I started going through all of the ancient texts, such as the pyramid texts of ancient Egypt, such as the Mayans' Popol Vuh, such as the Upanishads, such as the ancient Jewish Kabbalah texts, and Kabbalah really isn't Judaism. It actually spans all the way back into ancient Egypt, and they probably got Kabbalah from ancient Egypt. But we take a look at Kabbalah, we look at all these various texts, the Gnostic texts. We hear about this luminous cloud, and this is also mentioned in the Bible and everything. It's also mentioned as the seventh angel, the angel whose one foot is on the land and the other is upon the sea. Also mentioned in the Colossians 1:15, Christ is the firstborn out of the infinite. This also spans back all the way into Plato. So what I discovered was that this particular luminous cloud, which ends up being the Orion Nebula that we hear about in all these Gnostic texts and so forth, this ends up being the very first man, which represents an archetype of humans. The archetype of humans, as we see right here, which the Orion Nebula is, the archetype of man is the symbol of Manus, which is the mind thinker. So the symbol of man is actually the mind. Now, this first archetype was used to create the world, and this is the reasons why we see the Mayans talk about it. When the first three hearthstones of creation were set, it created an image in the sky and on the earth at the same time. They were referring to the Orion Nebula because the Orion Nebula is the seat of creation to the Mayans. And it is the area where the mirror was created in the heavens, in the heavens and on the earth at the same time, and this is also what the ancient Egyptians were showing us. So that trapezium that you see right there is a mirror. It's actually, the earth is the mirror. But that trapezium is the same as what we see on Earth when we take a look at the Nile Delta, and that's what the Egyptians were showing us, or whoever built those pyramids so long ago were showing us, since there's no hieroglyphs inside them. But they were actually showing us the mirror that exists between heaven and earth. This luminous cloud that we see here represents the first emanation, which represents the archetype that Plato was talking about in his world of ideas and forms. So, with all of these images found all over the cathedrals, which is very mysterious because people were painting this area in very high detail 100 years before the first telescope, once I found out that this area was important and I started doing the digging across culture and I started looking at the geometry and I started taking a look at man and everything like this, I realized that all of the stuff I was finding in these cathedrals was all backed up by the ancient texts. If we go and take a look across culture, from the Bible to the Gnostic texts, to the Mayans, to the ancient Egyptians, to everything, to the Kabbalah texts, all of these things. And I found that these very important authors that were talking about this stuff were being shunned by many people. All of this pretty much stems from the church because the church wants people to believe a certain thing. So what happened is the Catholic Church began to demonize people like Blavatsky and Freemasons and stuff like this, and all this stuff can be found firsthand from the horse's mouth on the Vatican site. You can really get to see exactly what they think of the Freemasons. They've always thought the Freemasons were threatening to the church, and it's really always been about the Vatican being afraid of somebody else destroying the church. And so what they've done is they use their Jesuit arm, which is the people that go out and infiltrate everything, and they basically demonized all these people that have been bringing out the truth. But once any kind of an investigator that goes out and does the investigation and begins to take a look at things like art and see the way that art, it comes out in this, these people that were connecting to this place. And then you begin to tie all the pieces together across culture, you can see that people like Blavatsky and what these Freemasons and things were talking about and the symbolism behind all this stuff, they found a way to demonize everything from the swastika that they used with the Nazis to now we have the all-seeing eye, the eye in the triangle, which actually represents good man or being, according to E.A. Wallace Budge. These types of things. They found a way to demonize every possible angle you can think of and turn it into something that people should be afraid of. The whole purpose of this, the whole psyop of this, of course, is to keep people from actually looking and doing the research. But if you're one of those types of people who doesn't listen to the mainstream and you go out and do your own investigation, you start putting the pieces together and you find out what's going on. The key component to all of this, what I found, was Michelangelo's painting of the creation of Adam. Because what it did for me was it put together something very important for me. Because we know that he painted a brain, and we know that he painted the Orion Nebula. And by those two things, knowing that he painted both of those things, that put an essential piece of the puzzle together for me. Because now we can see that man and his mind is copied in the cosmos. And this basically takes us all the way back to Plato and the understanding of the world of ideas and forms. It gives us a better understanding of emanation and what actually emanation is and how it occurs, the first thing that happens, and then it gives us so many pieces to the puzzle. And as we begin to put the pieces of the puzzle together, we see that they all fit in just like they should, just like we're playing Tetris. It's amazing. This is what the church has tried to hide from people for so long. This is the reason why they took out things like the Gospel of Judas, showing that Jesus was going to return to this luminous cloud, which is exactly the luminous cloud that he was talking about. He was telling Judas that Judas was going to become a star, and Judas lifted up his eyes and looked into the luminous cloud, and he entered it. This luminous cloud that we see here is all over the place, but the church has found a way to hide it from people. But it is inside the Bible. It's the same vision that Ezekiel had. It's the same vision that Daniel had, and it's what we hear in Revelation. Revelation is a very Gnostic text. So, what I'm getting at here is that the images that are inside these cathedrals are backed up by all the texts, by all the data, by all the history that we see across culture and the meanings associated with it. And when we take a look at the diagrams that are associated to all this stuff in alchemical art and so forth, we see that it also backs up this stuff. That makes this area extremely important, and it is why I have been so focused on it for as long as I have, because I know that this is a major, major piece of the puzzle that people need to look at very closely. This ties to our history. It ties to our history all the way back to its most primordial state from which man first became man. Because this area that we look at right here when we look at the Orion Nebula is actually the first man. And that first man which is Adamus, which is the Christ, which is the first thing that comes out of the infinite. These are the same things that Horus was called and so forth. This first man represents a collective unity of all of humanity. So when we look up at that Orion Nebula, what we're actually looking at is we're looking at all of humanity as one being. This is the first Adam that was actually spoken of in the Bible. It wasn't a terrestrial man. It was a cosmic man. It was a heavenly man. And this is what all the Jewish scholars are now beginning to understand as well. We can even see this in the Secret Teaching of All Ages from Manly P. Hall. The first man that was created, which if you take a look at the Strong's Concordance in the Bible, the first man represents mankind. It represents all of humanity. So this is one being right here, which represents the first Adam, which is all of humanity, which emanated. It's the first emanation from the invisible. It is a reflection. Man is made in the image of God. God, according to Hermetic philosophies, represents infinite living mind. And so man is a reflection of the invisible spirit, which represents this infinite living mind, which was what we see in Hermetic philosophy. So this is the archetype of man right here. And this area of the Orion Nebula, this Orion Nebula represents the first man, and it represents our origins, and it's why I have focused on it for why I have, as long as I have, and why it is so important, and why my whole channel is dedicated to it. Now my challenge to people out there is that I now have almost 20,000 subscribers. I have many people that can't stand, they hate the fact that I brought this information out. They go out there and they scream that it's a hoax or that it's a lie or what have you. And all I'm asking is this. As long as that has been done, as long as the people have bitched and whined and moaned and everything else about how this is not true, I haven't seen one person step up to the plate and create any kind of an analysis video that debunks this information. Truth Heresy lost easily because all of the information has been backed up across culture. What he tried to throw out there a long time ago, as I continued to uncover and unfold all of this stuff, I proved him to be completely wrong, and I completely showed that this guy was a shill. No one out there has stepped up to the plate one time and provided any kind of analysis video that can prove that what I am showing you and all of the pieces of the puzzle that go along with it are debunked. And the reason why they have not done this, folks, is because they cannot do it, because there's too much data and too much information that backs itself up. But my challenge is to anyone, if you want to shut me up, if you want to take this channel down, create a video, an analysis video that goes across all the data that I have shown you so far and debunks it. But if you can't do it, then what people are really seeing is they're seeing the truth unfold. And so you can do all the whining and screaming you want to, but it's not going to do you any good, because the truth will prevail in the end. Know what's in front of your face, because what is hidden from you will be revealed. This is in the Gospel of Thomas. Another thing that the church has tried to shut up. So, this is a little bit of a review regarding my channel. I hope you guys enjoy it. You'll find the best videos if you really want to find out what's going on here. These first 3 videos under the overview, they're very long if you want to get a very detailed, comprehensive understanding of what's going on. If you want to get still even a better understanding, I have one called The Orion Mystery Solved, which you just saw right here. And this goes across culture and takes a look at a lot of different data, a lot of different descriptions and so forth. I show geometry in some of these. This all-seeing eye in the sky is very good. Shows geometry, shows archetypes and symbolism across culture, what it all means. There's geometry here in this missing capstone here. The important starter videos. I would basically go through the important starter videos that you see right here, including Black Hole Sun. I would definitely watch the All-Seeing Eye in the Sky and some of these other ones which are very visual, that show you the symbolism and so forth. The First Man, The Cosmic Christ is an excellent one from some of the Master Masons that I know. They say that they really like this video called The Cosmic Christ. Also, I would take a look at this recent one I put out called The Mirror Between Heaven and Earth. You can see what the Mayans and the ancient Egyptians were pointing to. Just some of I would say these top 3 rows right here will really give you a good understanding of what's kind of going on. If you want the long, detailed understanding where I really break things down and I kind of take things very slow from the beginning, I would watch these first 3 videos. The challenge is still out there to all these other folks that are so upset about this information coming out. All you have to do is find your best scholars and debunk the information, and I'll go away. But I will bet you 150% that we will not hear one peep from you guys. And the reason why is because this is the truth. You guys take care, and I'll talk to you soon.